Good afternoon, it's Joyful Christian Hermit. My laptop is back as of last night, but I'm coming down with something. Actually, from my neighbor, the young neighbor man. He's about 32 and just so kind, and he'd been very ill with a sinus infection for a couple of weeks. And so this week, a couple of days ago, he thought he was well enough, so he came over. We got this tile, the final big heavy piece of tile inset into the wall. And then the next day he thought he was a little bit worse, but not bad. But he came over and we worked in the garage with the door open and everything for about an hour. But he got really sick again. Then his grandmother came over later and chatted for a while in the house. So I'm coming down with something. And I'm not sure if it's what he has. Possibly. But I also had to go to the Apple store and get this last night. Although I think I was feeling it definitely by the time I got home, but I don't think it would work that fast. But the young man who helped me had terrible breath, which often is a signal of being sick. And then the day before, or 2 days before that, I had done some stock-up shopping at Costco. So, and I'd been to the bank just briefly. Those were the only places I've been out all week. So I picked up something from someone. And on top of my ordinary headache, with having a sore throat and my head feeling like I have pressure headache from sinus. It's probably a sinus infection. But the good news, this is how God is just so good. Through this one daughter, she texted me last night or late yesterday, just as I was really feeling it come hitting me. And she's in Mexico doing a clinic there, and said, did I want any Z-Packs? And with my mind how it is, at the time I couldn't think what a Z-Pack was. I remembered, that it's something. So I said, explain, and then I was working through, and then the word came, azithromycin. And yes, I wrote back, yes, please get them, because you don't have to have a prescription there. So she was at a pharmacy, and she didn't respond when I asked if she's not well. I hope she's okay, because why would they be at a pharmacy? But so she'll be back Monday night late, and I'll have medication. If I get too sick before then, I'll call the doctor Monday morning and get. But it always takes a Z-Pack with me, at least one. Somehow with the arachnoiditis, when I get something like this, I get it extra bad. But I was telling this young man, he tends to do that. We're a lot alike. And he has an injury from Air Force Academy that he graduated from. So a rifle butt in the back of the head or something causes him jaw pain and different things. So he gets things and gets them extra much. And I mentioned to him, I said, well, you're a victim soul of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Because I think he is. He gets things and is sick more than the normal. And he wasn't familiar with that. So I'm going to text him a little information. And I did text him to ask how he was doing. And the night that he was just here for an hour, but he had to come back to give his grandmother a message for her she needed medicine from a pharmacy that they had ready for her. And he's such a kind man to his family and helps take care of his grandmother, stays in her home so she can be at home and not have to be in a care facility, or she can handle things, but it's just getting at the point. She's 87 now, that it's harder, but she's in good condition, very good. And other than sorrowing, pray for her adult son. He's 64 now and has very bad COPD, is bedridden. And he lives in Mexico, actually. he married a Hispanic woman who has dual citizenship, and they choose to live there. I think the cost of living and the climate. So it's a wonderful family. And Sean is just a wonderful man. He just finished his master's degree, but is just trying to work through some of these illnesses he gets. So I wrote to him, though, and I did do this. I asked God to give me the gift of healing. That was the night before last, before I realized I was coming down with something. I asked for the gift of healing because I felt terrible that he came and made himself more ill. He like riled it up and got worse, helping me lift things in the garage. Well, one thing was outside the garage, big, heavy, and he could just lift that thing up. It was 130 pounds, but I didn't want it outside the garage. I don't want to aggravate the HOA men, not on purpose. But had I known that Sean was going to get so sick from an hour, of he carried tile in. It's tile for the shower when I get to that point. But he was so sick then. By the time he left, I could tell. So I said, he knew too. He needed to go. And then when he came back like 3 hours later to give his grandmother that message, he was just sweating from illness and so sick. So he got it back worse. And so I get these things, but last year I didn't. But mine will last 8 to 10 weeks. I get stuff bad. With arachnoiditis, it gets very, very bad. More so than it would normally. So I'm drinking hot water with lemon, fresh lemon in it, and taking Tylenol. I have to take extra pain meds just because of my back. I tried to be up today doing things. I made some cranberry, apple, and orange all ground up with pecan and just put some of this artificial, well, it's not artificial, it's stevia in with it for a little sweetener because cranberries are very tart. But I'm eating on that, lots of vitamin C, and hope I can get through this. But I feel it in all my pain areas too. So I thought more to offer as a victim soul for various souls. And there's a woman back in the Midwest that this other lady let me know about who has terrible corn on her feet. And she's a handicapped woman, mentally slow, disabled in that regard, elderly woman. And this other woman is so kind to her and took her to the doctor because she also has a bladder infection, and to see about her corn, to see if her foot was infected. Because it's hard. She lives alone, but, just was born slower and mentally. And so imagine, life is hard, especially when you get sick or have pain like she's having with her foot. So I told God about that. I said, please, I'd like to be able to heal that lady. And I thought, well, what gives me the gall to ask God to give me the gift of healing? But I thought, well, Mary says, ask for graces. Jesus has lots of graces that we don't ask for. So I thought, be bold and ask, because I would like to heal Sean from this horrible sinus thing. That was before I even knew I was getting it. And I would like to heal that woman who, when your mind isn't adept and you're alone and you have pains like that corn, I think she worried that it was infecting her foot, and bladder infection. Even though the test came back negative, the doctor did give her medication. I'm thankful for that, because with someone like that, they need extra help. because all of her symptoms were right on for a bladder infection. So it might have been just on the cusp of turning into it, where it would show up in a blood test or a urine test or something. But over the weekend and the holiday, then my friend who lives down the street and her husband can go check on her. But it's probably for reassurance, just to know she has something in case it gets really bad. So I'm not one just to be taking antibiotics for no reason, but I think that was compassion on the part of the doctor, to know that this woman would knew her already and knew she would be worried and upset, not understanding fully, and helpless, feeling vulnerable and helpless. So God bless my friend who also carries quite a cross of a mental illness that was inherited and came when she was in her 30s, I think, later 30s. So she's heavily medicated, but she and her husband know and understand. And God bless them for taking care of this woman, because people like that don't really have many friends. It's sad to say, but most people want people that converse at their level and do things. And that's what I've learned with my pain disability, that social life scatters, really. And also being spiritually different, it can affect in a little way, in ways, but not bad, not terrible, usually that. But the physical, definitely with me, I can't do what people enjoy doing. And then with this other woman being slow, and my friend with her being medicated and her mental health, she's very bright. She's a wonderful friend. She's growing in holiness. She inspires me, and has way surpassed. She's living a better hermit life in a way than I am, by far. It seems to me anyway. So I'm just very astounded by her, and then the acts of charity that she and her husband do. She in particular, and her husband drives her, and he's of the same type person. So I found this poem. It's been a couple of days, but using my phone was very difficult, trying to type. I have large, long fingers, and it was hard I kept misspelling words and things, and technical troubles. But this is by a poet, a very early on poet from Spain, Prudentius. His name is Prudentius. 348, and he died sometime after 405 in the early 5th century. But here's what Prudentius wrote. And it's extracted from a Christmas hymn, but it's called, "He will be called Son of the Most High, He will rule forever." So here's this poem that Prudentius wrote back in the 4th century. Show yourself, sweet infant, brought to birth by a mother most pure, who gave birth to you, not knowing man. In both your natures show yourself, O mediator. Though born in time from the Father's mouth, fathered by his word, even now you dwell in the Father's breast, who are eternal wisdom. You are the wisdom who created all, the heavens, the light, and all that is. You are the mighty Word who made the world, for the Word is God himself, when he had set in order the course of ages and fixed the laws of the universe. This builder and framer of the world remained in the Father's breast. But when time had covered thousands of years, you came down to visit this world so sinful for so long a time. Christ could not bear the fall of peoples who were lost, nor allow his Father's work to descend into nothingness. He put on a mortal body that the resurrection of our flesh might break the bonds of death and bring us back to the Father. O gracious Virgin, do you not sense how, despite your sorrowful presentiments, this glorious childbearing increases the luster of your virginity? Your most pure womb contains the blessed fruit. This glorious childbearing increases the luster of your virginity. Your most pure womb contains the blessed fruit that fills all creatures with joy. A new world will be born through you, dawn of a day that shines like gold. And that is the earliest poem that I've known of, that I've read. I'm sure there are others that are before then. Of course, we have Old Testament, which was poetry. But this Christian poetry, Prudentius, in the 4th century, wrote this poem. Just very impressed, early 4th. See, when was it he was born? 305, something like that, or 348, and he died sometime after 405 to 413, in that range. So, being fascinated by his name, Prudentius, and the fact that he wrote this poem that has a certain style to it, I wanted to find out more about Prudentius. His full name is Aurelius Prudentius Clemens. That's his name. He was a Roman Christian poet, born in the Roman province of Tarraconensis, now northern Spain, in 348. He probably died in the Iberian Peninsula sometime after 504, possibly around 413. The place of his birth is uncertain, but it may have been Caesaraugusta or Saragossa, later called Saragossa. Someone at my front door. I'm not going to get, I think it's a delivery. Getting gifts from, I've been doing Christmas shopping online for my family and having it sent places, but the one who's in the area and her son I have sent here. So that's probably what's going on there at the door. So his life, he practiced with law with some success at first. He was twice a provincial governor, so he's educated, very educated, perhaps in his native country. And he was summoned to court by Theodosius I, summoned him to court. Towards the end of his life, possibly around 392, Prudentius retired from public life to become an ascetic, fasting until evening and abstaining entirely from animal food, and writing poems, hymns, and controversial works in defense of Christianity. So really it was just the last 8, potentially 16 to 20 years of his life. At most 20 years that he did his writing. There's hope. Although I don't have 20 left, but maybe 2 or 3. And I've done writing before and some poetry, but nothing serious. But look how beautifully he wrote. And Lovey, no, honey. He really became quite the poet. Here it talks about his poetry. No, Lovey got in trouble. This is how the computer broke before, him putting his paw down on it while I was closing the screen, and it broke the screen. Oh, Stay away from the laptop, Lovey. He wants attention. He's getting so spoiled. So his poetry, it says here, Lovey, now just move away. He's influenced by early Christian authors, such as Tertullian and St. Ambrose, as well as the Bible and the Acts of the Martyrs. In fact, the Bible, I think, dear, they see someone out the window. Someone reminded me, this is how dogs communicate. They're just talking and excited. So I can, don't shush them too much. They don't do it that often. They're excited. Their tails are going. Lovey's tail is just back and forth like a big rope in the air. But I think I have a title for the book I want to write from the Bible, from Corinthians. It's just a little phrase that stands out. But so the Bible is very good for inspiring us. And then also the Acts of the Martyrs influenced Prudentius. So his hymn, Da Pure Plectrum, including Corde Natus Ex Parentis, it's called Of the Fathers, Love Begotten, and the hymn for Epiphany, O Sola Magnarum Urbium, Earth has many a noble city, both from the Catharmerenon, are still in use today. That is a selection of Prudentius's hymns. Those two are still being used today. So this particular poem that I read a section of is from the Psychomachia, and it is his most influential work, incorporating, as it did, elements of both Hellenic epic and inner psychological conflict. There was the back and forth going on. It became the inspiration and wellspring of medieval allegorical literature. Its influence, according to C.S. Lewis, exceeding its intrinsic artistic merit. So C.S. Lewis felt that the influence of his poem went really beyond its own artistic merit, but the influence alone of influencing those in the medieval times to write was its major value, its merit. In the battle between virtue and vice, full weight is given to the power of luxuria. That's another poem. Flowers shod and swaying from the wine cup, every step a fragrance. With her attendants beauty and pleasure, and her weapons of rose petals and violets, she succeeds in swaying the army of virtue in surrender to love, before succumbing to ultimate defeat. That's from another poem called Luxuria, that has a lot of interplay between virtues and vices, temptations and things. So with Prudentius's major mergering, he merged Christianity with classical culture. He was one of the most popular medieval authors. Now, he didn't live in medieval times, but the medieval authors loved reading him. And he was any reader in the medieval times loved him as an author from earlier times. He was very popular in the medieval period. Being aligned as late as the 13th century alongside such figures as Horace and Statius in André de Andely's Battle of the Seven Arts between grammar, poetry, and logic. A battle between grammar and logic. So they did more writing like that. We can think of Chaucer's writings, poetry in the medieval time period. A medieval writer writing his poetry then. but a lot of allegory and interplay between good versus evil, virtues versus vice, and all was influenced, or much of it, influenced by Prudentius back in the 4th century. So his works, the lists of Prudentius's works, giving in the preface to his autobiography, mention the hymns, the poems against the Priscillianists and against Symmachus and Peristephanon. I didn't look these people up. The diptychon is not mentioned. That's another body of work. Some of these are body of works. The Priscillianists are a group of thinkers, a certain type of people, and I'm sorry I didn't look them up ahead of time to tell you. Now I'm curious about what type of people they were, what their interest was in. The 12 hymns of the Catharmerinon, or the Daily Round, that's something that Prudentius wrote, consist of six hymns for daily use, 5 hymns for festivals, and 1 hymn intended for every hour of the day. So he was a prolific writer in early times, one of the earliest of Christian poets and hymnists. Another one that I had looked up and didn't talk about, he's called Melodius. They've given him that name of Melodius. Something Melodius is his official name because of his hymnography, that he was a hymnographer, a writer of hymns. But I think he was a little later century. But I might check that out because we're coming into a period with Christmas and Epiphany. Christmas is just, what do we have? 3 days left of Advent after today. Tomorrow is the 4th Sunday. Yes, 3 days. And then Advent will be past in 2024. But much singing and rejoicing, beautiful Christmas hymns at this time of year. And the beautiful masses by Bach and Mozart and different ones, and the Messiah by Bach. I remember last time I brought that up, I couldn't even remember. No, by Handel. Handel's Messiah. I did it again. I'm trying to get to the bottom of what is my memory issues, and it has to do with pain. If I take the pain meds, I'm better with memory. But now I'm just so sick all over. And I'm having gut issues at the same time. So, and I wanted to comment also on the man who came to the door wanting to buy my truck. I did talk to a policeman, and he put me all at ease and pointed out practical reasons why the man really wasn't up to no good. He was okay. Somehow he just happened to be driving in here, saw my truck, pulled over, was probably texting on his phone because the neighbor saw him looking at his phone and then looking like as if addresses, but he was probably just looking over at my truck. Some people like an older truck. And truly, it's a little old lady has driven it, barely. Sometimes not even once a week. So it would be appealing to people. But, and I'm thinking maybe God wanted me to sell it to him because it started making noises now. And I think I need new brakes. That can be very costly, but it's making noises not related to the brakes. So God may have been signaling me, or the man needed prayer. When I have odd things happen, it's always for some reason. We all do. It's for some reason God's getting our attention. So I've been praying for that man. Now I've been praying about my truck in case, God brought a buyer for me. I don't know. Should have gotten his name and number. Okay, so he would have had it checked out, I'm sure, for I charged a decent amount. But I don't have the money to be buying a new not a new one, even a used one. They've gone up a lot. I've had that for over 12 years, nearly 13 years, so finally got it paid off. So I just needed to hang in. But I was thinking of other reasons why maybe prayers were needed. I started praying for him to find a truck. Maybe he wanted one for a son or something, or a daughter for Christmas. Just happened to see mine, happened to be in this neighborhood. The detective even said maybe he's a construction man who was, somebody was remodeling that has money to hire people to do it for them, and was driving by in his own work vehicle and not in his, it was a Cadillac Escalade that he was driving, which that's why it just made it seem so strange. But no one's been back to steal it. So, and no one had called the police about anyone else doing this. And the policeman said, well, he wouldn't come to your door if he was casing it out. Because you could easily identify him. He wouldn't do that, So the policeman put reason in it. I don't know about these things as I should, as much as the British mysteries I have watched and detective shows. But when it comes to my own detective work, I was thinking, he says, you can come up with all kinds of horrible scenarios, which of course is what I was doing. So thinking, maybe he was going around other neighborhoods and he was the front man for some big, car theft ring or something. So the policeman, he was not real young. He was maybe middle-aged. I could tell you he was starting, get a little humor out of it. And so I said, well, I think you do know what you're talking about. And I said, I'll be at peace and I'll stop coming up with all these intriguing scenarios. He says, yes. He says, I can tell you're a person who could come up with many. And I said, indeed, yes, I could. So no matter what our conversations or our encounters, let's try to have fun with it, especially when we're old and forgetful and in pain and coming down with some yuck. Gotta keep going. And but I was so impressed with the poem, and I agreed. I thought, it didn't have any super artistic wow factor when I read it, did it? No, but it had these lines, and they were all thoughts of relationship with the birth of Jesus coming. And it was, I think it was how quaint, but also the time period being such an old poem, and how a poet back in that time period would put things together. They weren't yet at rhyme or not even particular meter, but with thought and with love. He wrote that poem with love, and he spent the last years of his life writing poetry and hymns. So it was content that mattered, just the sheer content of the words and the meaning. Not rhythm, not rhyme. They weren't in sonnet form, no particular pattern. But I thought some of the word arrangement was interesting, and I was really taken by it. So I hope you were too. And I liked it. Prudentius, he went by Prudentius for his poetry and hymns, not his other two names included. So I thought that was a marvelous name. We don't find parents naming their children Prudentius today. Maybe someone will. But God bless his real presence in us, and we'll see what's coming up next. What pops to mind, what God brings to mind to yap about with you. Have a beautiful rest of your day, or night, whatever part of the world you're in.